The night was quiet, but quiet in the kind of way that felt wrong. The kind of silence that pressed against the skin and made every sound louder than it should be. The crunch of leaves underfoot. The whisper of wind moving through bare branches. The low hum of a faraway owl. Clara moved quickly along the narrow road that cut between the woods and the empty fields. The small town she had always called home was behind her, its few glowing streetlights now swallowed by the darkness. She had walked this road countless times before, but tonight the air carried something different. It was heavy, sharp, as though the night itself was holding its breath. She pulled her jacket tighter around her body. Autumn had stripped most of the trees bare, and their twisted shapes clawed at the sky like blackened fingers. Her breath rose in faint clouds breaking the stillness. She was late, much later than she wanted to be, and her father would not be pleased. He never liked her walking this way alone. But Clara had grown up stubborn, and though she knew his fears came from love, she had never been the type to let shadows scare her, at least. Not until tonight. She stopped suddenly. The hair on her arm stood straight, and her heart gave a sharp kick. It wasn't a sound exactly more like the sense of being watched. Slowly, she turned her head toward the tree line. Nothing. Just black trunks, deep brush, and the silver glow of the moon painting shapes in the darkness. She forced herself to breathe, shaking her head at her own nerves. It's nothing. Just a rabbit. Maybe a deer. Still, her steps quickened. Clara was not the sort of girl to be noticed in town. She lived quietly, worked at the small diner by the corner of Main Street, and cared for her father in their fading farmhouse after her mother's death. She had friends, yes, but nothing close. And she carried the kind of beauty people did not speak of openly soft, unpolished, something that felt both familiar and distant, like a melody no one could place. If she had secrets, they were only in her dreams. Dreams that had grown darker in recent weeks. Every night she woke with the echo of howling in her ears. Her sheets tangled around her body, her skin clammy with sweat. Sometimes she remembered golden eyes in the dark, watching her. Sometimes the flash of sharp teeth. But most often it was just the moon, too bright, too close, burning her from the inside out. She never told anyone. She wasn't sure anyone would believe her. A sound cracked through the stillness. Not an owl. Not a rabbit. Heavy, deliberate Clara froze, eyes wide. Her throat tightened as she searched the tree line again. There, just between the trunks, something shifted. A shape too large to be a man, too quick to be a bear. For a breathless moment, she thought the shadows themselves were moving. "Hello?" Her voice broke the silence, thin and nervous. No answer. The silence came back sharper, cutting into her chest. She thought about turning, about running, but her legs would not obey. They felt rooted, held by something deeper than fear. The wind picked up, carrying with it a smell that made her blood run cold. Not rot, not smoke. Something wild. Something alive. It was the scent of the forest itself. Damp earth, sharp pine, but heavier, as if soaked in blood and fire. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on the uneven road. And that was when she saw them, eyes, golden, burning, fixed on her from the dark. They glowed with an unnatural light, holding her where she stood. They weren't the eyes of an animal. No, these eyes understood. These eyes chose, for the first time in her life. Clara felt as though she had been found. The thing in the shadows did not move closer, and yet she felt it pressing against her, surrounding her. A pulse ran through the air, through the ground, through her bones. The silence broke with a single sound, low, deep, and impossible to mistake. A growl dot, it shook the trees. It shook her heart. And then, as quickly as it came, the sound was gone. The eyes vanished. The woods looked empty once more. Clara stood trembling, her breath ragged. She wanted to believe she had imagined it, that it was the trick of a tired mind and a restless night. But when she looked down, her blood chilled. There, in the soft dirt at the side of the road, was a single paw print, large, heavy. Far too large for any wolf she had ever heard of. The edges of it still crumbled fresh. as if whatever had left it stood there only moments ago. The moonlight shone down on the mark, pale and cold, as if warning her. Clara backed away, her eyes locked on the trees, fear curling like ice through her veins. Yet beneath the fear was something else, something dangerous. A pull she could not explain, as though the print was not just a sign of warning, but an invitation. When she finally turned and ran, she did not stop until she saw the weak glow of her farmhouse windows. But even there, with the door locked and the lights on, she could not shake the feeling that she had been followed home. That somewhere out there beneath this same moonlight, those golden eyes were still watching her, waiting. The next morning should have been ordinary. Sunlight spilled over the fields, warming the frost still clinging to the grass. The rooster crowed from the neighboring farm, and the steady hum of life returned. But Clara woke with a weight in her chest that no daylight could lift. She had not dreamed, and somehow that felt worse. The silence of her sleep pressed against her like a lie, hiding the memory of those golden eyes. She lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old farmhouse creak in the wind. When she finally rose, her father was already gone off early to work on a neighbor's tractor. A note sat on the table, his handwriting sharp and hurried. Back by sundown. Don't go out late again. Clara folded the note in her hand. He didn't know what had happened. She wasn't sure she wanted him to dot at the diner. Life carried on as if nothing had changed. The bell above the door jingled. Regulars filled their usual booths, and the smell of coffee mixed with bacon and grease. Clara tied her apron, pasted on a smile, and moved between tables like always. But she was not the same. She found herself glancing too often at the window, checking the edge of the woods across the street. She listened for sounds beneath the chatter, half expecting to hear that low growl again. Clara! Mrs. Jensen's voice snapped her back. The elderly woman smiled kindly from her booth, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. You're pale, dear. Are you sleeping well? Clara hesitated, then nodded. Just fine. But the woman's eyes lingered on her longer than usual, almost as if she knew something. Later that afternoon, Clara carried a tray of pie slices. She overheard two men whispering at the counter. Their voices were low, but she caught enough to freeze her in place. Another sighting near the river. Too big for a wolf, they said. Tracks as wide as a man's hand. Clara's pulse quickened. She tried not to listen, but their words dug into her chest like claws. When she turned, both men stopped speaking. One looked at her with a strange expression, half suspicion, half warning. She forced herself to walk away, but her hands shook so badly that one of the pie slices nearly slipped from the tray by the time the sun began to sink. Clara's nerves were stretched thin. She left the diner quickly, her steps hurried on the cracked sidewalk. The woods seemed darker than usual, though the sun had not fully vanished. Halfway home, she felt it again, that pressure of being watched. Her breath caught. She turned sharply. A man stood at the edge of the trees. He was tall, dressed in a coat too heavy for the mild evening, his skin pale against the shadow of the forest. His eyes, Clara's heart lurched. They were not golden, but red, glowing faintly in the dim light. He did not move, did not speak. He only watched her, head tilted slightly, like a predator curious about its prey. Clara stumbled backward. "Who are you?" Her voice cracked. The man gave a thin smile, one that never touched his eyes. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, stepped into the trees and vanished. The woods swallowed him whole. Clara ran the rest of the way home. She locked the door, pulled the curtains, and stood in the quiet of her kitchen, trying to steady her breath. First, the eyes. Now this. She told herself she was imagining things. But when she glanced at the counter, she saw something that stole the air from her lungs. The folded note from her father was gone. Her gaze darted around the kitchen. Nothing else seemed out of place. The door had been locked when she arrived. And yet the note was missing, as if someone had taken it. A silent hand slipping through her home without a sound. Clara backed into the living room, every nerve alive with fear. That night, the dreams returned. She stood in the clearing of the woods, the moon heavy above her. Shadows twisted at the edges, and a growl echoed through the air. The golden eyes appeared again, closer this time. Burning with a strange mixture of hunger and sorrow, a voice whispered low, urgent, "Run, before it's too late." Clara woke, gasping, her sheets damp with sweat. The sound of the whisper lingered in her ears, to dismiss as imagination. The next day she avoided the woods completely. She stayed inside, cleaned the house, tried to occupy herself with chores. But the farmhouse felt different now, hollow, as though she was not alone, even when she saw no one. The floorboards creaked at odd times. The wind carried whispers she could not explain. In the afternoon, she found her father's toolbox open, tools scattered across the barn floor. He was not home, and she knew he never left things in such disorder. Her stomach turned cold. By evening, dread hung over her like a storm cloud. She kept the curtains closed, the doors bolted, the lights burning. Yet even then the shadows seemed to move just beyond her sight. Near midnight, Clara heard it, a faint scratching sound at the window. Slow, deliberate. Her chest tightened. She forced herself to look. The window pane was dark. But against the glass, just for a heartbeat, she thought she saw a hand. Not human, not animal. Long clawed fingers dragging slowly across the glass before vanishing into the night. Clara's breath came in shallow bursts. She stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. The house fell silent again, but the silence no longer felt like safety. It felt like the pause before something worse, and then came the sound that froze her blood. Howl, low and distant at first, but growing louder, closer. It rose through the night, wild and terrible. Shaking the very walls of the farmhouse, Clara pressed her hands over her ears. But the sound filled her anyway, sinking into her bones. It was the same howl she had heard in her dreams, the one that always came before the golden eyes peered. She dropped to her knees, trembling as the howl echoed one final time. And in that heavy silence that followed, she knew the danger was no longer waiting in the woods. It was coming for her. The night stretched long, heavy with silence after the howl faded. Clara did not sleep. She sat on the couch with every light in the house glowing. Her eyes fixed on the windows, afraid that if she blinked, something would be there. But exhaustion came anyway. Her head nodded once, twice. And at last her eyes closed. She dreamed of the forest again only. This time the dream felt sharper, more real. The cold bit into her skin, the smell of pine and damp earth filled her lungs, and the sound of her own heartbeat throbbed in her ears when she opened her eyes in the dream. He was there, a figure stepped from the shadows. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his movements fluid like a predator. His hair was dark, brushing his forehead, and the fire of the moon lit his sharp features. But it was his eyes that made Clara's breath catch those golden eyes, glowing as if they carried a piece of the moon itself. Her body told her to run. Her heart told her to stay. The figure stopped a few feet away, close enough for her to see the lines of tension in his jaw, the way his chest rose and fell like he was fighting something inside him. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice deep, rough, carrying both warning and pull. Clara swallowed hard. "This is my dream." His lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. Dreams can be dangerous. She wanted to ask who he was, why he haunted her nights, but the words tangled in her throat. He stepped closer, and though fear tightened her muscles, she did not move away. There was something in the air between them, something that pulled at her like an invisible thread. The ground seemed to hum beneath her feet. "Why are you following me?" Clara forced the words out, her voice trembling but steady enough. His eyes softened, though the rest of him stayed hard, controlled. "Because I have no choice." Her heart skipped, unsure if his answer frightened or thrilled her. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The woods around them were still, as if the whole world waited. Clara searched his face, trying to make sense of him. He was dangerous, every instinct told her that. Yet beneath the danger was something else, something almost broken. "You're not human, are you?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. He looked away for a second, then back at her. Not the way you are. The truth hung heavy in the air, too large to grasp. Clara shivered. Part of her wanted to wake up to escape the weight of it all. But another part leaned closer, drawn to the mystery. To him, he stepped nearer still, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His scent reached her wild, earthy, edged with smoke, and it made her dizzy. "You should fear me," he said, his voice low, almost pained. "Everyone does." Clara's chest rose and fell quickly, her pulse racing. "Then why don't I?" The question slipped from her before she could stop it. For a heartbeat, his golden eyes widened, as if she had struck a hidden truth. "You should," he repeated, though his voice broke softer this time, almost a whisper. A wind swept through the clearing, and the moonlight shifted. For a moment, Clara thought she saw his shape flicker part man, part beast. The glimpse was quick, gone in a blink, but it sent her heart lurching. "You're him," she breathed. "The one I saw, the one who left the mark." His gaze locked on hers. No denial, no escape, only truth. "Yes," he said simply. Clara stumbled back a step, her hand flying to her chest. "Why me? Why are you?" But before she could finish, his hand shot out, catching hers gently but firmly. The touch was electric, a spark racing through her skin straight to her heart. She gasped. "I don't know why," he said, his voice raw, "but I felt you long before I saw you. And now that I have, I can't let you go." Her breath tangled in her throat. Every part of her screamed this was wrong. He was not human. He was dangerous. She should run. And yet the way he looked at her made it impossible to move. It wasn't the look of a hunter stalking prey. It was the look of someone starved. Someone who had found something he wasn't meant to have but couldn't release. The forest faded around them. It was only the two of them now, caught in a strange, forbidden gravity. "I don't belong to you," Clara said, though her voice wavered. His golden eyes burned brighter. "You don't understand. It isn't about belonging. It's about destiny." The word struck her like a blow. Destiny. Her stomach tightened, her head spun. She wanted to reject it, deny it, but deep inside, something stirred in answer. "I don't believe in fate," she whispered. His hand tightened on hers, though not enough to hurt. "You will." The air thickened between them, and Clara felt her pulse quicken in a way she had never known. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear was something far more dangerous once. She wanted to know him, to understand him, to step closer when every instinct told her to flee, and she hated herself for it. The sound of branches breaking echoed through the forest, sharp and sudden. He snapped his head toward the noise, every line of his body turning tense. "Protective. They're coming," he said, voice urgent. "This dream won't hide you forever." Clara's eyes widened. "Who's coming?" But before he could answer, the world around her began to unravel. The forest blurred, the moon faded, and the golden glow of his eyes was the last thing she saw before she woke. Clara sat bolt upright in her bed, breathless, her skin tingling where his hand had held hers. It had been a dream, and yet her palms still burned with the memory of his touch. She stared into the darkness of her room, heart hammering. Torn between fear and something she couldn't name, all she knew was that she had never felt so alive, so shaken, so claimed. And though she tried to push it away, one truth pressed harder with every beat of her heart. She wanted to see him again, even if it destroyed her. The morning after the dream, Clara moved through the farmhouse like a ghost. Every corner felt smaller, every sound sharper. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, just her imagination twisting shadows into something more. But her palm still tingled where he had touched her in the dream. And no amount of rubbing eased the feeling at the diner. She poured coffee, cleared plates, smiled at customers. To anyone else, she looked like the same Clara. But inside, she was restless. Every face she saw seemed to watch her too closely. Every sound of the wind against the window made her flinch. Twice she caught herself staring at the woods across the street. expecting to see golden eyes in the shadows by mid-afternoon. The first strange accident happened. Clara stepped outside to take the trash out. The air was crisp, the sky pale with thin clouds. She rolled the heavy bin toward the alley behind the diner when she heard a sudden crack. A sign above the back door, loose but never fallen, snapped from its hook. It crashed down only inches from where she stood. Clara stumbled back, her heart pounding. "Clara, are you all right?" One of the cooks rushed out, his eyes wide. She nodded quickly, though her legs shook. "I'm fine." Just startled. But she wasn't fine. Something about the way the sign felt too exact, to close as if it had been meant for her. That night, the dreams returned. This time she was not in the forest, but in the diner itself. The booths were empty, the lights flickering. Outside the windows, the world was pure black dot, and in the center of the room stood the figure with golden eyes. "You can't keep pretending," he said. His voice echoed low and rough, filling every corner. Clara shook her head. "I don't want this. I don't even know you." "You will." His eyes glowed brighter. "You're already mine." She woke with a cry, her sheets damp with sweat, her heart thundering. The next morning, Clara tried harder to ignore it all. She focused on simple things: sweeping the kitchen floor, folding laundry, answering her father's questions about work. But the world didn't let her forget. When she went into town for groceries, she noticed whispers following her. People turned their heads as she passed, eyes narrowing. Two men at the hardware store went silent the moment she stepped inside. She told herself it was her imagination. But when she overheard a woman muttering, "The wolves are restless again," her stomach twisted cold. On the walk home, another strange thing happened. She was halfway down the road, groceries in her arms, when a black dog darted out of the trees. Its body was thin, ribs sharp against its skin, but its eyes glowed faintly yellow. The animal froze in the middle of the road, staring straight at her. Then it let out a low, guttural growl that sounded far too deep for its size. Clara's breath caught. Her bag slipped from her hands, apples rolling across the dirt. The dogor wolf, she couldn't tell, snapped its jaws once. Then, without warning, it bolted back into the woods and vanished. She stood trembling, too afraid to move for several long minutes. That night, Clara tried to stay awake. She lit a candle and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the flame until her eyes burned. But exhaustion won. When sleep took her, the dream was worse than before. She was in her own farmhouse. The windows rattled, the doors groaned, and the walls shivered as if something circled outside. She ran to lock every bolt, but the moment she touched the door, claws raked across the wood from the other side. She screamed and woke with a start. The scream was real. The sound of claws scraping against wood was real too. It was coming from her front door. Clara's body froze. Her heart hammered so hard it hurt. She gripped the blanket, unable to breathe. The scratching came against, low, deliberate. A long drag of something sharp across the door. She forced herself out of bed, her legs trembling, and crept toward the sound. Each step creaked on the old floorboards. The house was dark, the only light spilling from the thin moon outside. When she reached the door, she hesitated. Her hand hovered above the knob. Then she heard it. A low growl, deep and vibrating, from just beyond the door. Clara backed away, terror filling her chest. The growl grew louder. The door shuddered under the weight of something pressing against it. Suddenly, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Clara held her breath, straining to hear anything. Then, just faintly, she heard footsteps, heavy, slow, moving along the porch toward the window. Her stomach twisted. She turned her head, and there they were, golden eyes glowing through the glass, fixed directly on her. Her breath caught. Her body screamed to run, but she couldn't move. The eyes held her, pulling her into their light as if she belonged to them already. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, the window cracked beneath the weight of claws. Clara stumbled back, her hands flying to her mouth. Her heart thrashed, her mind screamed. This was no dream. This was no accident. The supernatural world was here, clawing at her door, shattering her windows, and there was no escaping it now. Clara didn't sleep after the window cracked. She sat in the dark, clutching a kitchen knife, waiting for claws to break through. But nothing came. The woods outside stayed silent, the golden eyes gone as if they had been part of her imagination. By sunrise, she felt hollow. Her father had already left for work, and the quiet farmhouse seemed too large for her shaking breaths. She went to the diner not because she wanted to, but because routine was the only thing keeping her sane. She worked with trembling hands, pouring coffee, clearing plates, smiling without meaning it. Yet every time the bell above the door chimed, her heart jumped. She half expected him, whoever he was, to walk in, and then he did. It was late morning, the crowd thinning. Clara carried a tray of empty cups when the air in the diner shifted. She didn't need to look up to know. She felt him before she saw him, as if her body recognized the energy in the room. When she turned, her breath caught. He stood just inside the door, tall, broad shoulders filling the frame, dark hair falling across his forehead. His eyes weren't glowing now, they were only amber in the light, but they still locked on hers, like a flame finding dry wood that the world around her blurred. For a long moment, no one moved. Then he stepped forward, each stride slow but certain, as if he already knew where he belonged. He slid into a booth in the corner. Clara forced her legs to move. She carried her notepad like a shield, her pulse hammering. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice too thin. He nodded. "Black." His voice was low, steady, carrying something that made her skin prickle. She brought him the cup, careful not to touch his hand. But he watched her in a way that felt too close to knowing. "Clara," he said softly. Her heart stuttered. She hadn't told him her name. "How do you?" she began. But he cut her off with a look. "I hear things," he said. "I notice things." She swallowed hard and stepped back. "You shouldn't be here." "Why?" His lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. "Are you afraid of me?" "Yes," she whispered before she could stop herself. His gaze softened just slightly. "Good, you should be." He stayed for an hour. He barely touched the coffee, yet he never took his eyes off her. When customers came, he seemed ordinary, a quiet stranger, nothing more. But when they left, the air between him and Clara thickened again, heavy with something unnamed. Before leaving, he leaned across the table. His hand rested on the wood, inches from hers. "You dream of me," he said. Not asking, but stating. Clara froze, blood rushing to her ears. Her throat closed. She wanted to deny it, but the truth lay in her silence. He leaned closer still, his breath warm against her skin. "Dreams are only the beginning." Then he stood and walked out, leaving her trembling. That night, she didn't fight sleep. She wanted answers, even if they came in the shape of shadows. And he came again. Not in the diner this time, but in the woods. "You don't belong here," she told him. Her voice shook. He moved closer, the darkness folding around his broad frame. "And yet, here I am. You called me." "I didn't." She snapped. "You did?" he murmured, lifting a hand as if to touch her. He stopped short, his fingers inches from her cheek. "You feel it, don't you?" The pull. Her chest rose and fell. Every part of her wanted to step away, but her body betrayed her, leaning closer instead. "Why me?" she asked. His eyes glowed faintly. "Because you're not afraid of the dark. You've lived in its shadow your whole life. I see it in you." His words struck deep, cutting into the lonely places she kept hidden. For the first time, Clara didn't wake from the dream in terror. She woke with her heart racing for another reason, one she was too afraid to name. Days passed and the bond grew. He came to the diner again and again, always sitting in the same booth, always ordering coffee he never drank. Sometimes they spoke only a few words. Sometimes he said nothing at all, only staring as if silence itself was a language between them. And Clara began to look forward to it. She hated herself for it. But she couldn't stop. Every time the bell above the door rang, she hoped it was him. When he spoke, his words stayed with her long after he left. When he leaned too close, the heat of him lingered. And when he wasn't there, the world felt gray, like she was missing a piece she had only just discovered. One evening, as she closed the diner, he appeared again. "Walk with me," he said. She hesitated. "I shouldn't, but you will." And she did. They walked in silence, the small town fading behind them, the forest rising ahead. The air was cool, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. Clara's heart beat hard, yet her steps matched his as if her body had already chosen. "Who are you?" she finally asked. He stopped beneath the trees. Moonlight slipped through the branches, painting his sharp jaw, his broad chest. The shadow in his eyes. "I am what you fear," he said. "And what you crave?" Her breath shook. "That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters." And then so close she could feel the heat of him. He lifted a strand of her hair and let it fall through his fingers. A gesture so simple, yet it burned. For a heartbeat, Clara thought he would kiss her. She wanted him to, even though every warning inside her screamed not to. But instead, a sound tore through the forest, a howl. Long, low, and filled with rage. The figure's body went rigid. His jaw tightened, his eyes flashing bright gold for the first time in the waking world. Clara stumbled back, her chest seizing. She had seen those eyes before, staring through her window. Glowing in the night, he growled, not at her, but at the darkness beyond the trees. His teeth bared too sharp, too inhuman. Clara's body froze with fear. The truth she had tried to avoid crashed over her. He wasn't just a man, and whatever he was far from alone. The howl rolled through the forest, deep and mournful, shaking the trees. Clara's blood ran cold. The mano, the thing before her stiffened. His chest rising as if he could breathe in the sound itself. His eyes blazed gold, brighter than the moonlight, sharper than any human's. Clara stumbled back, her shoes sinking into damp leaves. Every instinct screamed to run, but her body wouldn't listen. She was caught, frozen between terror and something else, something that pulled her closer, even as fear tried to drag her away. He turned toward her, his jaw clenched tight, his hands curling into fists as though fighting some invisible force. "You shouldn't be here," he growled, his voice rougher now, edged with something not human. Her heart pounded. "What are you?" Silence hung between them. Only the rustle of the trees answered. Then another howl came, closer this time, angrier. He glanced into the darkness, then back at her. For a moment, Clara thought she saw pain in his golden gaze, a war he couldn't win. "I am not your enemy," he said at last. "Then what are you?" Clara whispered. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he stepped back into the moonlight. Clara's breath caught. His shadow on the ground shifted. It stretched, warped, as if it no longer belonged to a man at all. His fingers curved into claws that glinted sharp under the pale light. His shoulders broadened, his movements too smooth, to animal dot. And when he lifted his head, a low, guttural growl slipped from his throat. Clara gasped. The truth slammed into her chest. He wasn't human. He was the eyes at her window. He was the shadow that stalked her dreams. He was a wolf and something far. Worse, she stumbled backward until her back hit a tree. He stopped moving, chest heaving as if every breath cost him control. "I didn't want you to see this," he said, his voice breaking, half human, half beast. Clara shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You've been watching me? You came to the diner. You?" Her voice cracked. "Why me?" His eyes dimmed, softening, though his claws still gleamed. "Because I couldn't stay away. Because you called to me." Her stomach twisted. His words burned into her, filling her with equal parts longing and dread. "No," she whispered. "This isn't real. I am cursed," he said sharply, his tone cutting through her denial. "A life bound by the moon. A fate carved before I could choose." Clara stared at him, unable to move. The forest felt smaller now, as though the trees themselves leaned in to hear. Another howl tore the silence. This one was so close the ground seemed to tremble. The figure's head snapped to the side. His body tensed. "They've found me," he said, his voice low. "Dangerous." Clara's breath caught. "Who, my kind?" he answered. "And they will not spare you." Before she could speak, he stepped toward her. His clawed hand reached out, trembling as if torn between gentleness and violence. "I should leave you," he whispered. "But I can't." Clara flinched, pressing harder into the bark. "Don't touch me." His eyes darkened. Pain flickered across his face, but only for a moment. Then the golden fire returned, bright and dangerous. "You think you can still choose?" he said softly. "But the moment you saw me, your life changed. The moon does not give second chances." Branches cracked behind them. Heavy footsteps moved fast, circling. Clara's heart raced. She looked at him, the beast, the man, the stranger who had invaded her world, and terror twisted with something else. Something she refused to name. "Run," he ordered. His voice a growl, but she couldn't. Her legs wouldn't move. "Run." He roared, his face flashing into something not human at all. Clara stumbled forward, finally breaking free. She pushed past the trees, branches clawing at her arms, her breath burning. But even as she ran, she couldn't escape the image burned into her mind. His glowing eyes, his claws, his words. "The moment you saw me, your life changed." She didn't stop until the diner's neon sign flickered in the distance. She collapsed against the door, gasping, her whole body shaking. Safe. She told herself safe, but she knew it was a lie. The world she thought she knew, the town, the woods, the quiet safety of her small life was gone, torn apart by a truth that couldn't be unseen, and worse. She felt it inside her. That pull he spoke of, that thread tying them together. She hated it. She wanted to rip it out of her chest. But no matter how hard she tried, the bond only tightened. The next morning, Clara tried to return to normal. She served coffee. She smiled at strangers. She pretended her life hadn't been cracked open under the moon. But every sound outside made her flinch. Every shadow on the wall felt alive. And when the bell above the diner's door chimed, her stomach twisted. It was him. No golden eyes now. No claws. Just a man in a dark jacket, sliding into his usual booth like nothing had changed. Clara's hands shook as she poured his coffee. "Why are you here?" she whispered fiercely. His gaze met hers, steady, unflinching. "Because you still don't trust me." Her throat tightened. "Should I?" For the first time, his expression faltered. Something like sorrow flickered across his face, gone as quickly as it came. "No," he said quietly. "You shouldn't." Clara froze, the tray trembling in her hands. And with those words, the little safety she had left shattered. The days blurred together after Clara learned the truth. She tried to act as if nothing had changed, but the lie weighed on her like a chain. Every morning she woke with his voice in her head. Every night she listened for howls beyond her window. And he kept coming dot-aways to the diner, always to the same booth, always watching her with those amber eyes that carried too much silence, too much knowing. Clara told herself not to look at him, not to care. But each time her chest tightened. She was caught in a net she couldn't tear free from. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the street, he waited outside when she locked up. "You shouldn't be here," Clara said. Gripping her keys. "You say that every time," he replied, his voice calm, steady. "And yet here I am." The air between them thickened. She hated how her heart betrayed her, beating faster, leaning closer. "Why me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You could have chosen anyone. Why me?" "I didn't choose," he said simply. "The moon did." His words rattled her, shaking something she didn't want to name. The forest drew them in again, night after night. She told herself she wouldn't follow. But her steps always betrayed her. They walked beneath the tall pines, where shadows pressed close and the earth smelled of rain and moss. Sometimes they didn't speak at all. Sometimes he told her pieces of his past, never the whole truth. But fragments sharp enough to cut. I wasn't born like this, he said once, his eyes fixed on the moon. It was forced on me. A curse, a chain. Now I live by their laws or die by their teeth. Clara shivered. There. My kind, he said darkly. The pack. They follow the alpha. And His jaw tightened. I was never meant to bow. Something in his tone made Clara's stomach twist. Defiance lived in his blood, a fire that refused to be put out, and yet, when he looked at her, his eyes softened, almost breaking. You make me forget, he whispered. But danger was never far. Clara began to notice shadows in the town that didn't belong. Strange figures standing at the tree line. Yellow eyes glinting from parked cars that never moved. Whispers followed her in the street. Voices too low to hear, but sharp enough to chill her at the diner. A man came in one night. Broad, scarred, his smile thin as broken glass. He sat in the same booth the stranger always claimed. When Clara set down the coffee, the man's hand closed around her wrist. His grip was iron, his eyes gleaming unnatural gold. You're the girl, he said softly. The one he can't stay away from. Fear locked Clara's throat. Then the door swung open. He was there. The two men locked eyes. No words passed, but the air cracked with violence. Clara's heart raced as her wrist was released. The scarred man stood, his smile sharp. Enjoy her while you can, he said. The alpha won't. Then he left, vanishing into the night. Clara trembled as she closed the diner. He walked her home, silent, until they reached the porch. You shouldn't have been touched, he said, his voice rough with fury. Clara stared at him. What did he mean? The alpha. He didn't answer. His jaw worked, his fists clenched. Finally he whispered, they'll use you against me. They already know. Her knees weakened. Then you have to leave. If you stay, I can't, he cut in, his voice raw. His eyes caught the porch light, glowing faintly gold. I should, but I won't. Clara's chest tightened. She didn't know whether to run or to reach for him. Nights grew heavier. The pack closed in. She heard howls closer than before, footsteps in the woods that stopped when she turned. Her father mentioned strangers asking questions about their family, and still, she found herself drawn deeper. One night, he appeared at her window again, not as a shadow, but standing there openly. His expression haunted. They will come for me, he said, and they will come for you. Her heart ached at the fear in his voice. He was a creature of claws and fire, yet in that moment, he looked like a man caught between battles he couldn't win. Clara pressed a hand to the glass, not touching him, but closer than she had ever dared. Then don't fight it alone. He closed his eyes as if her words wounded him. You don't know what you're offering. The next evening, the pack struck. Clara was walking home when they surrounded her, four figures slipping from the shadows. Their eyes glowing, their smiles cruel. She smells like him, one said. She belongs to him. Another sneered. And soon to the alpha. Clara's breath hitched, fear crushing her lungs. Then he came. He moved like fire through the dark, faster than she could follow. Snarls tore the night as claws slashed, bodies crashed. The pack scattered, retreating with growls of warning. When it ended, he stood over her chest, heaving, his hands dripping with something too dark to name. His eyes burned gold, brighter than ever. Clara stumbled back, horror and awe clashing inside her. You killed them, she whispered. I saved you, he growled. But you... Her voice shook. You're not human? I told you what I am, he said, stepping closer. And you're still here. Clara's heart warred inside her. She wanted to run, to slam the door on all of its attack, the claws, the fire in his eyes. But she also wanted to stay, to step closer, to understand why his voice made her tremble, why his presence made her feel less alone. He looked at her like she was the only thing holding him to the earth. Clara, he whispered, her name breaking on his tongue. The moon has bound us. You can fight it, or you can accept it. Tears stung her eyes. If I accept it, I lose everything. His jaw tightened. If you fight it, you lose me. The night closed around them, silent but heavy, as if the trees themselves waited for her answer. Clara stood at the edge of the porch, her chest torn in two. Pull away or surrender to destiny. Clara could not shake his words. If you fight it, you'll lose me. They echoed through her chest, louder than the howls in the woods. But what frightened her most was not the bond itself. It was the feeling she could not deny that, somehow, even before she knew his name. She had already belonged to him, and now the pack knew. The Alpha knew. She was no longer just Clara from the diner. She was a target the following morning. Clara went through the attic of her father's farmhouse, looking for answers she could not explain. Dust covered the trunks and boxes, the air heavy with the scent of mothballs and old wood. Her father rarely spoke of her mother. Clara only knew she had died when Clara was young, leaving behind shadows where memories should have been. But as Clara opened a cedar chest, something caught her. Aja leather-bound book, cracked with age. Its edges burned as if it had survived a fire. She lifted it carefully. Inside were handwritten pages, filled with symbols and words she didn't understand. One page made her freeze. It was a drawing of a crescent moon, with a wolf's head etched inside. Beneath it, scrawled in faded ink, was her mother's name. Her father's footsteps creaked on the stairs. "What are you doing up here?" he asked, his voice sharper than usual. Clara turned, the book clutched against her chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. "About Mom. About this." Her father's face went pale. He stepped forward and tried to take the book, but she pulled back. "Clara," he said, his voice low and heavy, "that is not meant for you." "Then who is it meant for?" She cried. "Why was Mom's name in it?" "What aren't you telling me?" He pressed a hand to his forehead as if the weight of years finally broke him. "Your mother's family. They were not like us. They were tied to the old blood. To the ones who walk under the moon." Clara's stomach nodded. "You mean werewolves?" Her father's silence was the only answer she needed. The room swayed around her. Clara clutched the book tighter. "So all this time you knew. You knew what he was. What I might be." Her father's eyes softened with sorrow. "I wanted to keep you safe, to give you a life far from their world. But you lied," Clara whispered. "I protected you," he insisted. "If the pack knew who your mother was, they would have taken you long ago." Clara's breath shook. The truth was worse than it was belonging. She wasn't just caught in their world by accident. She was born to it. That night, she carried the book to the woods. She had to see him, to demand answers he could no longer deny. He was waiting. It's as if he had known she would come. "You feel it now, don't you?" he said, his golden eyes steady. The pull. The blood. It was always there. Clara lifted the book, her hands trembling. "My mother. She was one of you." He nodded slowly. "Not one of us, but bound to us. She carried the bloodline. The moon marked her family generations ago." Her chest ached. "So what does that make me?" He stepped closer, his voice rough but certain. "It makes you the key. The prophecy has always spoken of one who walks between worlds, human and wolf. A bridge, a danger, a destiny." Clara's knees weakened. "No, I'm just a girl. I work at a diner." You are more than that," he interrupted, his gaze burning into hers. "The pack knows. The Alpha knows. And he will not stop until you stand at his side door are destroyed." Clara shook her head, fighting tears. "So my whole life has been a lie. My father, my family, everything." "Not a lie," he said gently. "A shield. But shields break. The truth always finds its way through." Her chest rose and fell in quick bursts. "And you? Why are you here? Is it Mior, the prophecy?" For the first time, he looked away. Clara's heart cracked at the silence that followed. Days passed, but Clara could not return to her old life. Every sound carried new meaning. Every glance from strangers felt loaded with suspicion. She read through the old book again and again. Most of it was unreadable, but one passage, written in her mother's hand, was clear. The one born under the crescent will choose to bind the alpha's power, or to break it forever. Clara traced the words with shaking fingers. Crescent, her birthday. Her fate. When she saw him again, she didn't waste time. You knew, she said, her voice sharp. You knew what I was. His jaw tightened. I knew pieces. Not all, liar, she spat. You let me think this was just attraction. But it's more, isn't it? It's fate. He closed the distance between them, his eyes burning with something fierce. Yes, he admitted. Fate brought you to me, but it's not the prophecy that makes me want you. It's you. Clara's breath faltered. She wanted to believe him, but the doubt had already rooted deep. Tell me the rest, she demanded. Tell me everything. His silence was heavy, crushing. Finally, he whispered, If I tell you, you will never see me the same. Before Clara could respond, a sound cracked the night. Not a howl-laughter from the shadows, figures stepped forward. Wolves in human form, their eyes glowing. Their smiles cruel. At their center stood a man taller than the rest, his presence heavy as stone. His eyes were darker gold, his posture commanding. The Alpha. So this is the girl, he said. His voice smooth but dangerous. The bridge. The prophecy. The one who will decide if I fall or rise. Clara's blood turned cold. The Alpha's gaze swept over her, then landed on the man at her side. His lips curved into a smile, sharp as teeth. You didn't tell her the truth, did you? He said, you didn't tell her what she really is. Clara's breath caught. She turned to the one she thought she could trust, her chest pounding with betrayal. What is he talking about? She demanded. The silence that followed was worse than any answer. The Alpha's words echoed through the clearing. Sharp as claws, you didn't tell her what she really is. Clara's stomach tightened, and she turned to him, the one who had pulled her into this world, the one she had started to trust. But he said nothing. His jaw was clenched, his golden eyes heavy with secrets. Her chest burned, a teeny. He had always known more than he let on. The Alpha stepped closer, his presence pressing against the night like a storm. His pack fanned out behind him, a wall of glowing eyes and silent threat. Poor girl, the Alpha said with a mocking smile. You thought he wanted you for yourself. But no, he wanted you because of what you carry. Because of what you are. Clara's breath shook. What am I? She demanded, her voice breaking. The Alpha tilted his head. The one who decides if we live free or fall into ruin. The prophecy made flesh. His grin widened. And he kept it from you, hoping to make you choose him when the time came. Clara's pulse hammered. She looked at the man who had saved her, who had held her, who had made her heart burn with both fear and longing. Is it true? She whispered. For a moment. The forest went silent. Finally, he spoke. Yes. The words shattered her like glass. She stumbled back, clutching the old leather book to her chest. The Alpha's laugh rolled like thunder. See? Even now, he plays his part. You think he loves you, girl? He loves what you carry inside. He wants your choice to save him. The pack stirred, restless. The air felt ready to break. Clara wanted to run, to vanish into the trees, but her legs wouldn't move. Her heart screamed to believe the one standing by her side, but doubt poisoned every thought. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice raw, his face twisted with pain. Because I wanted you to see me, not the prophecy. I wanted your choice to be yours, but the Alpha only sneered. A liar wrapped in a lover's skin. Dangerous, isn't it? The night ended in chaos. Howls ripped through the air, and Clara barely escaped with him at her side. Her heart pounded as they ran through the woods, branches tearing at her arms. She didn't know who to fear more, the Alpha, who wanted to use her, or the man she had begun to love, who had hidden the truth all along. When they finally collapsed by the river, the moon reflected silver across his face. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I don't know who you are anymore, she whispered. His jaw tightened. I am the same man who saved you. The same man who would bleed for you. But you lied, she said, her voice breaking. And now I don't know if anything between us is real. Days passed in a haze. Clara tried to return to normal life, but normal no longer existed. Shadows followed her everywhere. Whispers floated through the diner when she worked her shifts. Customers she didn't know watched her too closely. She felt hunted, and worse, she felt torn. Her chest ached for him, even as her mind told her not to trust. Every look he gave her was heavy with longing and regret. One evening, as she walked home from work, a man brushed past her on the dark street. He leaned close and whispered, "The Alpha wants you." Her blood ran cold. She spun, but the man was gone. That night she found him waiting outside her house. His shoulders were tense, his eyes sharp. "They're closing in," he said. "The Alpha won't wait much longer. He'll take you if he can." Clara folded her arms across her chest. "And what if that's what you want too?" He flinched as if struck. "Clara, how do I know you're not leading me into his hands?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How do I know you're not just pretending to care?" He stepped closer, his voice rough. "Because I would rather die than see him touch you." Her breath caught. His words felt raw. True, but trust was fragile now. Broken glass between them. Later, she found her father at the kitchen table, his hands trembling over a cup of cold coffee. "You should leave," he told her. "Run. Far from here. They'll destroy you if you stay." Clara shook her head. "I can't. If what the book says is true, I'm the one they're after. Running won't stop it." Her father's eyes filled with pain. "I kept this from you to protect you, but now I can't protect you anymore." His voice cracked and Clara's heart twisted. For the first time she saw the fear in him, not just for her, but for himself too. That night, danger found them. The wolves came to the farmhouse. Their howls split the silence, circling the house like fire. Clara's father grabbed the shotgun from the wall, but his hands shook so hard the weapon rattled. Clara's heart thundered. She grabbed his arm. "Stay inside, please." But before he could answer, the door crashed open. Figures spilled into the room, their eyes glowing, their bodies strong and swift. Clara froze. She had nowhere to run. And then he was there. He burst through the back door, moving faster than she had ever seen, his body a shield before her. The clash was instant. Growls, fists, and claws tearing through the room. Clara screamed, covering her father. As wood splintered and glass shattered around them, the fight was brutal. He fought like a storm, but there were too many. One wolf lunged, slamming him against the wall. Another clawed his side, leaving crimson streaks. Clara's chest burned with terror. He was going to die, right here in her father's home. She grabbed the old book from the table, clutching it tight. The pages fluttered open and words glowed faintly in the moonlight. Her breath caught. The prophecy was alive in her hands. The Alpha's voice suddenly filled the house, calm and cruel. "Stop fighting, girl. Come to me, and I'll let him live." Clara's blood turned to ice. She looked at the man she both loved and doubted. Beaten, but still standing for her. His eyes met hers, pleading. Not for his life, but for her to choose her own path. Her father groaned beside her, weak and pale. The wolves closed in. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. The book glowed brighter, the words burning under her fingers. The Alpha's voice pressed closer. "Choose." And in that moment, Clara knew her next step would change everything. The house was chaos. Splintered wood littered the floor. Broken glass glimmered like tiny stars in the dim light. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, each beat matching the crash of the fight happening before her eyes. He, her love, her protector, the man who had stolen her heart, fought like a storm. But there were too many. Wolves, not all human, some shifting between man and beast, circled him, their eyes glowing gold. Clara's hands shook as she clutched the old book. Its pages glowed faintly, whispering in a language only her blood seemed to understand. The Alpha's voice cut through the chaos, cold and commanding. "Give her to me, and I will spare him." Her stomach dropped. Her choice was laid bare. Surrender her freedom to save him more, refuse and risk losing him forever. He threw one attacker into the wall. shattering a window behind him. He roared, the sound deep and inhuman, vibrating through Clara's bones. "You shouldn't be here," he growled, moving like liquid shadow, his claws flashing in the dim light. "I can't leave you," Clara shouted, stepping forward despite her fear. He froze mid-motion, his amber eyes locking onto hers. There was pain there, raw and undeniable, mixed with something darker, something he usually kept buried. "You don't understand," he said, voice rough, almost pleading. "If you get involved, you could die. Or worse." His gaze flicked to the alpha. "He could take you. And I could lose myself trying to stop him." Clara's heart seized. "Then let me help. I don't care if it's dangerous." He faltered, almost smiling, then lunged, throwing another wolf off balance. His movements were graceful, lethal, terrifying. But his hand brushed against his chest, and Clara noticed a dark line forming across his side. "Blood, no?" She screamed. Time slowed. Every second stretched painfully as she realized she had a choice and it was too late to be careful. The alpha stepped forward, massive and commanding, his presence like a shadow falling over her soul. "Decide, girl. Will you kneel or will you watch him die?" Clara's fingers tightened on the book. Words flickered, glowing brighter. The prophecy called to her, urging her to act, to step into the truth of her bloodline. The man she loved, bleeding but still standing, looked at her with eyes that said, "Trust me." But the alpha's shadow pressed close, promising power and fear, control and death. Her mind screamed, her heart begged, and her body froze. A wolf lunged from the side. He twisted, catching it midair, throwing it across the room. Clara ducked instinctively as claws tore through the wall where she had stood moments before. She saw his side again. Dark red blossomed against the pale skin of his chest. He winced, but did not stop, did not slow. Clara's chest constricted with fear. If I do nothing, he dies. If I act, I might destroy everything. Her fingers shook over the glowing page of the book. The words burned hot under her touch. She could feel her bloodline calling to her. The alpha advanced, the pack close behind him. "Choose, girl." Clara's heart thudded violently. She turned to him. "Do you trust me?" she asked, voice trembling. He met her gaze. The golden fire of his eyes softened just slightly, the human inside still clinging. "I trust you more than anyone," he whispered. "But be careful. If you choose wrong, we may never survive this." Her hands shook harder. She could see his shadow flicker, the darker side of him, the beast, the predator lurking beneath the man she loved. The fight was changing him. Rage, power, desperation twisting his soul. The alpha's voice rang louder like thunder. "Choose her or lose her." Clara's decision came in a heartbeat. She lifted the book, reading the glowing words aloud. Though she barely understood them, the crescent binds the blood, and the bridge shall rise or fall. The glow intensified, pulsing with a rhythm she felt in her own veins. The prophecy wasn't just words. It was alive and it called to her. She stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on his chest. The wound sizzled, and he roared a terrifying, beautiful sound shifting between man and beast. The alpha froze, eyes wide, sensing the power between them. The pack stopped circling, watching. Unsure. Energy erupted. Silver light poured from the book, swirling around Clara and him. She felt a surge inside her, a connection she had never known. Her blood, her power, his strength, they intertwined, glowing together like fire and moonlight. The wolves shrieked, caught in the pull. The alpha's grin faltered, his power meeting hers in a clash that shook the room. Clara's chest burned. Her fingers tightened against him. "Stay with me," she shouted. He answered with a growl, wrapping his arms around her mid-shift. His claws tore at the floor but never touched her. His amber eyes flickered human as the light from the book wrapped around them both. And then the world went still. The pack froze, their howls cut off. The alpha's expression twisted into fury. He stepped closer, every step a threat. But he didn't attack immediately. Clara's vision blurred with power, fear, and longing. She clutched him tightly, the connection between them pulsing like a heartbeat in the night. "Clara," he whispered, voice hoarse, "no matter what happens, survive. Promise me you survive." She wanted to nod, but before she could speak, a shadow hit him from the side, a massive wolf leaping, claws aimed for his chest. He roared, twisting, but the attack landed. He was thrown across the room, crashing into the wall. Clara screamed, falling to her knees beside him. His chest rose and fell, but blood slicked the floor where he had landed. His eyes met hers, wide and human again, filled with pain and trust. The alpha stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Decide, girl." Now Clara's hands shook over the book. Her body screamed to protect him, to fight, to surrender, to risk everything. But her mind froze. She had the power, the knowledge, and the love that could save him, but she didn't know what the cost would be. The room felt impossibly large and small at once. The pack waited. The alpha waited. And the man she loved, bleeding and exhausted, reached a trembling hand toward her. Clara's heart screamed. She had to choose, and in that moment the floor beneath them shook violently. A crack split the wood from wall to wall. A shadow darker than the night erupted in the corner. Clara froze. Her eyes widened as the shape stepped into the light. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't human. It was something else. Something old. Something that made the alpha flinch. And it looked straight at her. The shadow in the corner moved with a life of its own. Clara's stomach twisted as she realized this was no ordinary wolf. No human, and no alpha. It was older, darker, older than the forest itself. Its eyes glowed like coals, and every breath it took seemed to pull the air from the room. The alpha flinched. Even he, the most powerful of his kind, held back. Clara's hands shook as she clutched a glowing book to her chest. The words pulsed like a heartbeat, guiding her, calling to her own bloodline. She could feel the power inside her now, not faint whispers, but a roaring tide demanding release. "Clara," her love whispered. Blood streaked across his chest, amber eyes flickering human and beast. "You have to face it. No one else can." She swallowed hard. Fear clenched her throat, and the memories of every warning, every howl, every shadow surged through her. She had run from this world. She had tried to deny her bloodline. She had tried to trust him and the alpha, and it had only brought danger. Now, she had no choice. The ancient shadow advanced, filling the room with darkness that made the walls shiver. Its voice wasn't a sound, but a thought deep inside her mind. "You cannot escape. You are mine." Clara's chest heaved. She had never felt such terror. Yet beneath it, a strange calm began to settle. This was what her bloodline was for. This was what the prophecy meant. Her hands pressed firmly against the book, and she opened it to the page her mother had written. The words glowed brighter than ever. "The crescent binds the blood, and the bridge shall rise or fall." The pulse of power surged from her veins. She felt her mother's strength, her father's love, and the raw essence of her own being flow into her. The shadow roared, not a growl, not a howl, but a sound that shook the floorboards and rattled her teeth. It lunged. Clara braced herself. Her fear screamed at her to run, but she de-singled quotes to her love stepped beside her, taking her hand. Despite the blood on his chest, the exhaustion in his limbs, he held her steady. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. "Together, we can stop this." Clara's heart surged. The words grounded her, gave her courage, and reminded her why she was fighting. Not just for survival, but for love, for life, for choice. The shadow struck. Its claws slammed into the floor, leaving deep gouges in the wood. Clara felt its darkness pressing against her mind, trying to crush her. But she pushed back, focusing on the warmth in her hand, the steady strength of the man beside her, and the glowing words of the book. Her blood thrummed. Her senses sharpened. She saw the threads of magic, the invisible bonds between her, the book, and the shadow. With a trembling voice, she began to speak aloud the prophecy, reading each line with conviction, The shadow recoiled, hissing, its eyes flaring. It lunged again, faster, stronger, but Clara met it with her own power. Light flared from her hands, cascading across the room. Wrapping around it like chains, Love roared, leaping into the fray, claws extended, striking with precision. He moved as one with her energy, their connection flowing through every blow, every strike. For the first time, Clara realized they were stronger together. The shadow screamed, a terrifying sound that made the walls shake and dust fall from the ceiling. Clara's knees shook, her arms ached, but she refused to let go of the book, refused to release the words. Finally, she channeled every ounce of herself, the fear, the anger, the love into a single burst. A crescent of light, silver and gold, shot from her hands. It struck the shadow square in the chest, and for a moment the world went still. Then a sound split the silence, a cracking like the breaking of glass and bone. The shadow shrieked, flaring bright as fire, and then collapsed into a pile of black smoke. Clara staggered back, her chest heaving. Her love fell to his knees beside her, coughing but alive. The room was quiet now, save for their ragged breathing and the faint glow of the book. Clara's knees gave out. Tears blurred her vision. She looked at him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to truly see him, not the beast, not the mystery, not the danger, but the man who had fought beside her, who had risked everything for her. We did it, she whispered, voice trembling. He reached for her, gripping her hands, his golden eyes flickering human. No, he said softly, you did it. You're the bridge. You saved us all. The Alpha and the remaining pack had vanished. The threat had passed, at least for now. But the air was heavy with loss. The room smelled of smoke, blood, and magic. Clara's hands shook as she closed the book, knowing that, though they had survived, nothing would ever be the same. She looked down at the man beside her. He smiled weakly, but it didn't reach his eyes. The fight had changed him to more beast, more distant, more dangerous. You're hurt, she said softly. He shrugged, hiding the depth of his wounds. I'll survive. Because you survived. That's what matters. Clara's heart ached. She knew he was right, but the cost had been high. Every fight left scars, visible and invisible. The wind shifted outside, carrying whispers she could feel in her bones. The world was quieter, safer, but the prophecy lingered, humming like a warning. Clara had won the battle, but the war was not over. She sank to the floor beside him, resting her head against his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her, careful and protective. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, voice small. I don't know if I can carry this power, this bloodline, or you. He pressed his forehead against hers. You already have, and I'll carry it with you. Whatever comes next, we face it together. A shadow moved at the edge of the broken window. Clara froze. Not another wolf. Not another attack. Something else. Something she couldn't see clearly. The air grew cold, heavier. And then a voice, soft, familiar, but full of malice, whispered in her ear. Do you really think it's over? Clara's heart stopped. She spun around, but the figure vanished into the night. Her love grabbed her hand, pulling her close. We have survived, he said, but even his words trembled. Clara knew it wasn't over. Nothing like this ever truly ended. She held him tightly, feeling both the victory and the fear. They had won the battle, but the price had been steep. And the enemy, enchant, cunning, and patient, still lurked in the shadows. The prophecy had been fulfilled for now. But Clara felt it in her blood, in the pulse of the moonlight on her skin, in the steady thrum of her heart. Something had shifted inside her, something that could not be undone. She was no longer just Clara. She was the bridge, the bloodline, the choice. And the world outside the window whispered, dark and patient, the war is only beginning. The first light of dawn crept through the broken windows of the farmhouse, casting soft golden beams over the floor scattered with shards of wood and glass. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, exhausted, her hands still trembling from the battle that had raged through the night. The old book rested beside her, its pages closed and quiet now, as if satisfied with what had been done. beside her. He leaned back, his chest rising and falling steadily, though faint scars and bruises marked the toll of the fight. His golden eyes met hers, calm now, but carrying the weight of all they had survived. Clara swallowed hard. The air was heavy with silence, yet it was the kind of silence that carried peace after chaos, after fear, after choice. "You're awake," he said softly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I am," she whispered, though her voice was raw. "I can't believe it's over, at least for now." He reached for her hand, wrapping his fingers around hers. "It's never really over," he said gently, "but we survived, and that counts for something. More than you know." Clara's heart ached with relief. She had faced darkness, ancient power, betrayal, and fear. She had fought alongside the man she had come to love, had chosen to embrace her bloodline, and had stared death in the face and survived. The sun rose higher, painting the walls in shades of gold and amber. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the warmth seep into her bones. She looked down at her hands, once trembling with fear, now steady. The power of her bloodline still hummed faintly in her veins, but she no longer felt its weight as a burden. She felt it as strength. Her thoughts drifted to everything that had been lost. The farmhouse was damaged. Her father had been terrified beyond measure. And the world she had known, this simple, ordinary life, was gone. Yet even among the ruins, she could see what had been gained: courage, knowledge, love, connection, and, above all, the understanding that she could face whatever came next. Her love, wounded but alive, shifted beside her. "Are you thinking about what comes next?" he asked softly. Clara nodded. I know this changes everything. I can't go back to being just Clara from the diner. I'm something else now. Someone else, but..." She paused, looking into his eyes. Golden fire softened into warmth. "I want to face it with you." He squeezed her hand. "Then we face it together, no matter what." The days that followed were quiet, though the tension of the previous night still lingered. Clara and her love moved carefully through the world, knowing enemies might still be watching, but also aware of the strength they shared. They trained, they learned, and they healed not just their bodies, but their hearts. The bond between them deepened in ways neither could have imagined. Shared glances carried unspoken understanding, and quiet touches reminded them of the love that had survived chaos. Every brush of fingers, every warm look, spoke of trust regained and loyalty proven. Clara discovered that the bloodline she had feared was not a curse, but a gift, one that could protect, guide, and even inspire. Her confidence grew alongside her power. She was no longer the frightened girl who had stumbled into the woods months ago. She was a bridge between worlds, capable of both light and strength. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in streaks of pink and purple, they walked along the riverbank near the farmhouse. The water rippled gently, reflecting the fading light. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her own. "Do you think we've truly survived everything?" she asked, voice soft. He kissed the top of her head. "Survived? Yes. But more importantly, we've learned. We've grown. We've become stronger, together." Clara closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his words wash over her. She thought about the battles, the lies, the fear, and the choices that had led them here. She thought about the Alpha, about the prophecy, about the darkness they had faced. And despite it all, she felt a quiet peace. "Even if there are more battles," she murmured, "I think I could face them now." "You could," he said simply, "because you're not alone." Clara reflected on her journey. She had discovered truths about herself, about her family, about the world she had never known. She had confronted danger that would have broken anyone else. She had made choices that defined not just her survival, but the life she would now live. And she had found love real, deep, enduring love, in the midst of chaos. It was not a perfect love. It had been tested, nearly torn apart by doubt, fear, and danger. But it had survived, and it had grown stronger because of what they had endured together. She looked at him. The man who had fought beside her, saved her, and trusted her with his heart. The moment was quiet, simple yet profound. "I never thought I could feel safe again," she admitted. "Not after everything." "You are safe," he said softly, "as long as we are together. And we will be, Clara, always." Tears prickled her eyes, not from fear, but from relief, from gratitude, from love so deep it left her speechless. She rested her forehead against his, feeling the warmth of his breath, the steady pulse of his heartbeat. Night fell completely, and the stars reflected off the river like scattered diamonds. Clara held his hand tightly, knowing the battle had changed them both forever. Some scars would never fade. Some memories would linger, reminding them of the danger they had faced. But in the quiet of this night, there was also triumph, understanding, and hope. She knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and bonded not just by love, but by choice, courage, and destiny. Clara breathed in the cool night air and whispered, "Thank you for staying." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And thank you for trusting me, for trusting yourself. That is what saved us." She nodded, resting against him once more. The shadows of the past still lingered at the edges of her mind, but they no longer terrified her. She had faced the man, survived. She had chosen to stand in the light of her own strength. And in that choice, she had found love, purpose, and herself. The moon rose high, silver light spilling across the river, reflecting on their intertwined hands. Clara looked up at it, feeling the quiet hum of her bloodline, the echo of the prophecy, and the peace that came from accepting her destiny. She had been taken under the moon, tested by darkness, and drawn into a world she could never have imagined. But she had emerged whole, stronger, braver, and with love that would endure beyond any threat. The journey had been harrowing, painful, and beautiful. And now, as she rested beside the one she loved, she understood. Some battles end not with victory over others, but with victory over fear, doubt, and the shadows within. Clara squeezed his hand. "We're ready," she whispered, "for whatever comes next." He smiled, golden eyes soft with emotion. "Together," he said, and under the gentle silver light of the moon, they remained side by side, changed forever, bound by choice, courage, and love, ready to face whatever the world might bring, with hearts unbroken and spirits unyielding.